Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. In today's class, I want to continue talking about the theme of some words which are easy to pronounce and words which are difficult to pronounce. Last week, we were looking at the fact that it's not always straightforward what makes something easy or difficult. And there's some crossover categories where there's places that there are words that you think are difficult, but when you have the correct information, they're actually easy to say. And also words that are appear easy, but are actually hard to say because of errors you might be making. So we're going to break down these categories of pronunciation and give you some information to help you move more of your difficult words over into the easy category and make sure that you're not accidentally thinking some words are easy and saying them incorrectly. So some words are just actually easy to say, and usually that happens when the sounds and the spelling match and are straightforward. So what's an example of an easy word? I would say, for example, the word bead is a good example of a word that looks fairly easy, is fairly easy, because letters EA very often say the E sound. The B and D sounds are fairly easy. They're in most languages. So no tricky sounds in the word, no tricky spelling. It's very straightforward. Most people are not going to have any errors on a word like bead. But interestingly, there aren't too many words in English that are in this category of overall easy for most people. Usually there's at least some letters or sounds or spelling elements that make something a little bit difficult. And then last week we spent some time talking about words that appear easy but may actually be hard. And so our example last week was the word says, where the letters AY make you think you should be saying this as says, and it actually sounds like says. And so what happens here is that the sounds don't match the spelling. So when I'm saying the word says, many people mispronounce it because of the spelling. And so this is the place where having some information can help me correct this pronunciation and make it back into an easy word rather than a word that you think is easy but is actually hard. So information is the key when it comes to information. When it comes to these categories of words that are tricky, that are in the middle of the continuum where you're making errors because of a lack of information, we want to give you the information to help you. And then we were also talking about last week some words that appear difficult but actually are fairly easy once you have the correct information. And so they may have sounds that are hard to say. They may have spelling that's not straightforward. But once you have the knowledge, those words become easier. So last week we were talking about words like walk and literally, and giving you some tips and pointers for being able to make those words more easy. And then of course we do have words that are just difficult for everyone. So these have difficult sounds, difficult combinations of sounds, spelling that's not straightforward. They might be long, a lot of words and sounds to sequence. So in this continuum, what I want to talk about is what strategies you want to use for a word. Depending on why the word is difficult, you're going to attack it differently. So a word that's difficult for everyone, it's going to take practice and repetition. Words that are difficult because you don't have the correct knowledge, you need to have a system of understanding what sounds are in the word and how to say those sounds, a way of visualizing it. Words that are you think are easy but are actually hard, you need to become aware of what those words are. So this is a tricky category because you have to have somebody else point them out to you or start to research and become aware of words that are spelled differently that break the rules for spelling. And then easy words nobody really needs to work on. So at least there's one category that is straightforward, doesn't need a lot of work. So our topic today, we'll be looking at some of these types of words, and an upcoming video, I'll be breaking down each of these categories, giving you some strategies. What I appreciate from my last week's class was that some of you gave me feedback on which words were difficult for you and why. And so please feel free to do that in today's class. You can also ask questions about this topic or any topic in the chat or in the comments at any time. Let's take a look at a few of our words that we have categorized. So I want to start with our category of difficult words. Last week we talked about the word rural, and we broke that down for you. Today I want to break down this word, anemone, and you'll see actually that when I was making my video for this word, I misspelled it because I didn't have a way to remember what the sounds were in this word. So this word is difficult, anemone, because it jumps back and forth between similar sounds. So it was difficult for me as a native speaker. Maybe some native speakers find this easy because they learned it and memorized the spelling. But the other thing that's tricky here is that this spelling, if I looked at how I would typically say it, I don't know if I'm going to say this as own or one. Saying it as a-ni is very uncommon. It doesn't really match our spelling rules. So how do I break down and work on a difficult word? So we'll call this looks difficult and is difficult. So words that look difficult and are difficult. What is our strategy to be able to make them easier and to work on them? Okay, number one, we need to know what are the sounds. And to tie it in with what are the sounds, we have the letters. What sounds do they say? Do they follow the rules or do they break the rules? Also, do we know the rules? So, what are the rules for the sounds? Do they break them? Then secondly, we need to know for the sounds, the rhythm. Because the rhythm of a word dictates what the sounds are in many cases. For example, we have the word project, the noun. The rhythm is stressed on the first syllable, so we have the ah sound here. But if I'm going to project my voice, the spelling is the same, but now our stress falls on the ject syllable, and we have the sound here. So project versus project, I can't know what the sounds are if I don't have the rhythm correct. So what are the sounds is letters and sounds and rhythm. Then two, what is the sequence of the sounds? How do I get the correct rhythm? And how can I visualize that? So how can I remember? Remember and visualize it. And what I like there, as you see in my videos here in this class on the channel, I use two things. I'll use the IPA, which is those symbols that you see in the dictionary. It stands for International Phonetic Alphabet. It breaks down sounds for you. But I also like to just respell the word following the spelling rules. So many times these words will break the rules of spelling. If I can write it in a way that follows the rules, follows patterns, or follows at least a system in my mind that tells me what sounds I need to say, then I'm going to be able to say this sound correctly. So let's use our system here for anemone. Determine what are the sounds, what do the letters say, do they follow the rules, what's the rhythm, and then write it in a way that we can remember and visualize the correct pronunciation. Okay, so for anemone, how I would write this, I would break it down as anemone. I think I just said it wrong again. I think I tend to say anemone. I tend to transverse these two sounds. So my apologies if I mispronounced it, but I'm going to go through this strategy for myself as well as for you. Because as you saw, when I had it in my mind and I wrote it down, I was thinking na me instead of ma ni. So that's my issue, is remembering where the M and N go. I think for me also, if I would memorize the spelling of this word, it would become, it would still maybe look difficult, but not be as difficult for me to pronounce. Okay, so breaking that down, if we're going to use IPA, or International Phonetic Alphabet, we have second syllable stress. Letter E says the eh sound. Letter A says the sound. It's unstressed, so it's a schwa. Ne. Then this is what I have to remember. For me, I need a way to remember that sound comes before the second n sound. So ne, ma. Letter O again says a schwa. And then finally we end with ni. Letter E says the E sound. Very untypical for English to have that patterning. How would I write that? What's my visualization or alternative spelling, respelling? I do have a typical pattern I use here on the channel in my videos and in my online courses, which you've probably started to become familiar with. It resonates with many people because it follows the general patterns and rules, and it's consistent. I'm attempting to always use the same system to show you the pronunciation. So what I use for schwa is UH, or in some times I just use letter U. What I use for the vowel is EH. So, and for my stressed syllable, I also capitalize it so that you know that it's longer and clear vowel. So, ne, oops, not H, but EH. Ne. And then again, I have another schwa, ma. And for the E vowel, I typically use EE, anemone. So what I would say for myself as well, I don't have trouble with this first part, the ne. I'm usually saying that right. I'm just transposing the M and the N. So I might remember it. I might think of the word money, because actually that's what we have here at the end. So I can think money, anemone. The only problem here is that I don't have the same stress as I do in money. In money, I'm going to have a stress schwa here, longer. So anemone. So now that I know what the sounds are, I have a way to visualize it, I have a way to remember it, that my comes first. I just remember money, that's the order. How do I get this to be easier to say? Probably just a lot of repetition. Anemone. The more I repeat that and get that patterning in my mouth, the easier it'll be for me to say it if I'm trying to talk about anemones. I can also break it down and start on the stressed syllable. Anemone. I can practice just the unstressed syllable. Mani. That's where I'm making my mistake. Mani, anemone. And using my visual senses, looking at it, rewriting it, challenging myself to spell it correctly and write it again without having to revise and change that. That's going to be the patterning I use for a word that looks difficult and is difficult. Let's break here for a moment. I'm going to take some of your questions, and then I want to come back to our other categories of sounds that look difficult but are actually easy with information, and words that are easy but look easy but are difficult. But I want to just give a pause so that you can give me your feedback and your questions. If you have suggestions for your words which are difficult, we'll break down why they are, and we'll use those strategies. We'll talk about the strategies you can use for the other patterns as well. But I want to give a welcome to everyone who's here live, start taking some of your questions, and then I'll be returning to this topic later on in today's class and also in future classes. So welcome everyone. It's nice to see you here, and thank you for attending week after week and for your great questions. They really help me know what videos to make and what topics to talk about in class. Okay. welcome, Undead Heart. Great for you for making it even though you're on vacation. I hope you're enjoying the weather, and sorry about the lack of snow there in Colorado. I've heard that's been an issue for people. So your question is about dark L, when it's used. Yes. So dark L is basically what we call the L that comes at the end. So we have the L sound that starts words and starts syllables, and we have the L sound that basically it comes at the end of a syllable. Usually when an L is in the middle of a word, it's going to start a syllable rather than being at the end. But in a word like feel or table, that L ends the syllable. So if I'm saying feeling, I can say it with the L at the start of the syllable, feeling. And you hear the difference. What you hear is that if I'm saying feel, there is that little schwa vowel, or sometimes more of an vowel before the L sound. So when I say feel, it ends on that sound, and that's when I make the slightly different shape for my tongue for that L. Same with table, bull. When the L is a syllabic L, that's the dark L. That means that a syllabic L is just where there's an L and no vowel. So the little vowel before the counts as the vowel in my syllable. So the difference being, like if I said bell versus table, bull, I'm just going right from the B to the dark sound. In my dark L video, I call it a schwa before the L. I think it's really a little bit more of an sound because it's a little bit higher. The back of the tongue is higher for the sound. The would make it bull, I think that's a little harder to say. I think fits in a little more. And why I say that is if I say the word full, which has the sound, full, they're very full. That of full or pull or wool is the same I use in table. Pull the table, So I think it's kind of a sound before the dark L. So basically dark L will come whenever you're at the end of a syllable. And usually that means the end of a word, because in the middle, I can say feet. I didn't finish what I was saying. So feel, but feeling. I'm usually not going to do feeling, because it seems to then add an extra syllable. When I say feel, it's one syllable, but it almost sounds like two, feel. When I say feeling, basically it's two syllables, not three. So to answer your question, dark L comes at the end of a syllable. Sometimes in a word like, for example, fill or pull, fill, especially fill, ill. I don't really need to do much vowel linking before it. I'm not doing so much of a dark there. Fill. It's less distinct from the light L. Usually, if your L is correct, you can use a light L anywhere a dark L would go, especially because usually we're linking. So if I'm saying I feel it, I feel a storm coming, I'm just linking that L and my light L jumps back in. I don't really need the dark L. Comes in if I'm ending on it, for example, that's how I feel, then I'm more likely to use that dark L. I hope that's helpful for you. And I have some other information for you about, which maybe I'll send you in an email, but I wanted to mention that to everyone here on the channel that I have a new project. I'm working on an app, which I'm really excited about because it's taking my methodology, the way I teach American accent, pronunciation, and folding it in with AI so that you can get feedback on your speech, live, customized training specifically for your needs. So it's not available yet, and I'll let you know here on the channel when it comes out. But I was thinking about Undead Heart because she uses an app that sometimes tells her she's making a mistake, which she's not actually making based on what I hear her saying. And so in my app, I'm noticing that as I'm training the AI, it does have that tendency to want to find errors that aren't there sometimes. And so when I launch the app, I'm going to be also asking people to use it and to give it feedback and to say, no, this is actually correct in some places. So at any rate, that's coming up. And that was just a little bit of information for you that sometimes I know that the AI technology is not 100% there yet on terms of giving feedback for pronunciation and accent. Okay, long answer about dark L. Welcome from Norway. So nice to see you. I hope you're having wonderful weather there. And we have a question about so inseparable and foster. I saw inseparable. You didn't have a space before your and, so I thought it was a word I didn't know. So inseparable, which we apparently was inseparable from the word and, but we need to separate it. So inseparable. This one is probably difficult for you just because it has a lot of syllables and sounds, and then knowing where the stress should go, and perhaps using the R and the L together in the same word. Inseparable is stressed on the sep syllable. The IPA is inseparable with our syllabic L there. And I would respell that as inseparable, or just bull. Either way, whichever way is easier for you to visualize and pronounce it correctly. So you can try it without the in. Start on the stress syllable. Separable, inseparable. Separable, inseparable. I would say separable. This purra is very fast, so inseparable, you might hear it like pra in some speakers, reducing those two syllables down to one. That's also accurate and okay to say. And then your other word was the word foster. This is difficult because knowing what vowel letter O should say. Fa, it's an ah vowel, so foster. So we need to foster good hygiene or good habits. Foster. Okay, also might be difficult because of the combination with the as well, foster. Thank you for being here again and asking your questions. It's nice to see you again this week. Okay, we have a question about, welcome from Chile. It's nice to see where you're from, so thank you for letting me know that. We have a question about the words salt and halt. Yes, so I believe that you were asking about that last week when we were talking about the word walk as a word that you might think is difficult, but is actually easy when you know how to pronounce it. And that I'm going into walk in more detail in my upcoming video. But let's talk about salt and halt. So these words rhyme. And they don't follow spelling conventions in that in salt, alt, halt. I actually do say the L in these words versus walk. In walk, that L is silent. In salt and halt. Salt, halt. We have the all sound, salt. So it's basically I would respell it with all, salt. And I'm second guessing myself whether it's an all or an ol sound. Salt. I think it's an all, salt. Okay, so going back to my original premise for salt and halt. If you say the all word and then you add the S, all, salt, and all, halt. I think when we add the alt, it does change that ah vowel. It's not so open as an ah, like saw. Saw the salt, pass the salt. I'm really second guessing myself here again. So I'm going to use my dictionary to see what it says. I'm kind of thinking that AL is actually a little bit like a schwa sound. So even native speakers are influenced by the way something is spelled into thinking they're saying a sound that they're not. And so breaking down, being able to actually hear the sounds of a word are challenging. So I'm using Merriam-Webster to give me a little bit of feedback and help. I often use online dictionaries because you can listen and see. But for quick reference here, I'm going to look at salt. So they use different, they don't use IPA, they use an O sound. So they say it's the same as salsa. So I need another word with that, with their O sound. Okay, salt. That doesn't help me very much because I don't know how they use the O. Yes, let me use my online dictionary. 1 second. Thank you for your patience as I look this up. So I'm looking at Merriam-Webster online, and I'm going to look at the word all to see if they use the same. Yes, so they are saying it's like the all sound. So yeah, it just changes a little bit as I'm saying the word salt. It sounds a little more closed to me, and not as rounded. It's an awe. If I'm saying the full awe of saw, I have room to open my mouth. Here in salt, the awe gets a little bit diminished. So I would still respell it like this, and in the IPA I would write it like that, salt and halt. But a little bit tricky, yeah, even for me to kind of break down what I'm hearing as I say that. So I saw the salt. We all need to cut down our salt. All salt. Yeah, probably just a little bit of variance of that vowel because of that particular context. So I would call that one, for me, a word that I thought was easy, and then I started trying to explain it to you and found that it's actually a little bit difficult, and I had to go to a source for information to confirm what I was hearing. So definitely a word that looks easy but is a little bit trickier than expected. Yeah, I hope that helped you. Thanks everyone for being patient while I was getting some more information. I think that's a good lesson, though, that we can't always trust what we think when we see a word, and that it's good to have different sources of information to answer our questions about pronunciation. Okay, very good. So we've covered a couple words that were difficult, easy, easy, hard. So let's take some more questions from you and see where your words fall on our continuum of pronunciation. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we have another question about dossier and protégé. So a couple of words that come from the French. Let's look at how to pronounce dossier first. So in English, we have the last syllable stress, so dossier. We give some secondary stress to the da syllable, though, and then the R is silent. So the only times when we don't say R in English are when the words come from another language that doesn't say the R. So we have dossier. I would respell that or rewrite that as da, C, A, with our main stress on A, dossier. And then you were also asking about another French word, protégé. So in protégé, we do stress on the first syllable. So protégé. And we have first syllable stress. Letter O does say the O sound, like in program. We can flap that T, proda, in American English. Proda. This E is a schwa sound. And then we have zh, like in garage or massage. The letter G says the zh sound, like in measure. And then our final E says the A sound, protégé, because it has that accent. So I would rewrite that as protégé. Protégé. We usually spell the zh sound with letter S. I use ZH as a way of indicating what that letter should be. So it does zh is sometimes spelled with letter G or letter S, protégé. Good words. Thank you for that. These are, I would say, probably difficult because of really not following the English spelling patterns or rules at all, because they come in from the French. So just knowing which sounds you're supposed to say and where to stress is probably the most important pieces for these two words. Okay. Yes, and then Save the First also had a follow-up second question about hippopotamus. So let's break down how to pronounce hippopotamus. Also how to spell it. I'm going to look to you. So hippopotamus. So I would say this one's difficult because of knowing which vowel sounds it should have, and also just a lot of syllables in this word. Where the stress is on the pa syllable, with secondary stress on hip. So sometimes we just say hippo. That's a common abbreviation, a common way of saying hippopotamus is the short version. So we have secondary stress. Letter I says I. The first letter O says a schwa because it's unstressed, hippa. Then we have the main stress on the pot syllable. So this O says an ah sound like father. We flap that T. Then we have must, two more schwas. So rewriting it, spelling and visualizing, I would write hippopotamus. I also might write it as hip, because even though the syllable starts with the p sound, when I write hip this way, it helps you think of this I sound correctly with the same as in the word hip. So hippopotamus. You can start on the stressed syllable, potamus, and then go back to adding your first two unstressed syllables, hippopotamus, hippopotamus. Or just take the whole thing slowly, hippopotamus, hippopotamus. Fun word. Definitely a little bit challenging, so I can see why you would ask about that. So we have a question about what the words mean. So yes, people do just say hippo. I'm not sure which words you're asking about what they mean. So dossier and protégé, or dossier. The dossier is an assemble, a group of documents about something, and a protégé is like an understudy. Someone we would have an expert and then a protégé. Okay, and we have a question about how to pronounce help. So let's break down how to pronounce the word help. This one I would say is straightforward with regards to spelling, and maybe it's just difficult for you to pronounce and sequence and make sure that you're getting the correct sounds. Also, for many people, the vowel is a tricky one because it's not in your native language. So using other words with the sound might help you here. But it does follow our rules where we just have one sound for each letter. So it's straightforward when it comes to sounds and spelling. I might rewrite it with two L's and a P, help, because it's just like the hell of hello. So you can also think of this combination of sounds just like we say letter L, the L sound. Your jaw for the vowel is kind of open part way. It's a front vowel. The front of my tongue is down and the back of my tongue is lifted. But you want to make sure that you have enough opening, but not all the way open to not help or help, but help. To match that, you can use a vowel like get. That might be easier to say the F vowel before the T than it is before the L. So get, help, help them, another vowel, another word with vowel L. Get help for them. Yeah, I hope that helps you with that word. And you can let me know what is difficult for you in that word, and we can categorize it into our categories of difficulty. I would say for some people that's an easy word. For some people it's maybe this category of moderate, which I don't have on the board yet, but basically words that are moderate tend to be difficult just because of the way the word is spelled, what sounds are in it. They tend to have challenges because the sounds aren't in your native language, or just particular sounds are difficult for you as a speaker of a English as a second language, second or third or additional language, English language learner. Okay, wonderful. So going back to our concept of, we've talked about a word that's difficult for everyone, broken down how to correct that. Let's talk about words that are difficult, seem difficult to you, but are actually easy. And just as a reminder, these are words that are difficult because of the sounds in the word, the spelling, but once you have the knowledge, they tend to become easier. So let's think of another example of that. Last week we covered a few of these words. I'm going to talk about, how about the word, maybe you guys can give me a suggestion for a word that you think is difficult, and I can try to show why it's easy for you. Let's choose a longer word, maybe a word like communication. So this word you might actually think is easy. So this might be a better example of a word that that you think is easy, but is actually somewhat hard. You can let me know what you think after I've broken it down for you. But the error that I often hear, there's two things I often hear in the word communication that people do incorrectly. One is that they may not be using the correct sounds for the mu syllable. They may actually just say this as mu. So there's no letter indicating that has the y sound. They also might be stressing on the K syllable rather than stressing on, or they might be stressing elsewhere instead of on the A syllable where it should be stressed. Communication. So that they might stress on mune, for example. So also let's look at communicate. So the error tends to happen more on communicate rather than on communication. The mu error will happen on both. So in communicate, we actually stress on the mu syllable. So that's a good one to look at because we have the and y sounds together. So when we have letter U after M in words like music, communicate, we add in a little y sound even though we don't have a letter to spell it. So I've written it here with letter Y so you can recognize that it's just like the word you. Then we also have a tendency, sometimes people make an error on this first syllable. It should just have the schwa vowel, ka. So even though we have words like common or complicated where letter O says the ah sound, in communicate, it's just unstressed because the second syllable has the stress. And then communicate is how we write it. The IPA for communicate is communicate. So the nice thing about the IPA is that here we can see the y sound. It's actually written out in the definition, even though it doesn't show up here. What I hear is that sometimes people will say communicate. They'll stress here because we stress on the second to last syllable in communication. I do think some British dialects will stress it that way, communicate, rather than communicate. But in American English, we stress on the second syllable mu. So a few pieces of information can help correct this word. This might be something that you thought you were saying correctly, but you actually made a couple of these errors on. Or maybe it's an easy word for you as well, and you're saying everything correctly. Yes, thank you for following along with that. I lost track of my eraser. Oh, it fell on the floor. Okay, we have a question about just generally how to pronounce English words. So feel free to let me know some specific words. This class and this channel is about how to pronounce words in English, and so you can look up any word. You can also go through some of our playlists of difficult words and the sounds of English to get a strong basis in pronouncing English, and hopefully that will be helpful for you. Okay, we have a question about the word melee. Yeah, this is a great one for our topic today because it does not follow the rules for spelling. If it would, we would think it would be like me and Lee or meh and Lee. But instead, two different ways of spelling the A vowel. So we have first syllable stress. The may syllable is stressed. Letter E says A. And then the second two E's also say A. So comes to English, I think from French again, and has changed the pronunciation slightly in English. So we just say it with the same vowel in both the first and last syllable, but stressing on the may. So it was a real melee, meaning hubbub or a mess, a lot of activity and action. Melee. Yeah, good word. Thank you for that. And then we have a question about the word sought. Yeah, so you hit on a good category. I would say words with OUGHT are words that many people find difficult because you can't look at that OUGHT and know for sure how it's going to be pronounced, or at least OUGH. So in this word, sought, the OUGH says the aw vowel, which I could rewrite as AW. So if you think about I saw him, I sought him out, you're going to have the same vowel there. So when you see it spelled like this, it might become actually easier to pronounce. It's not that it's such difficult sounds in this word. It's more that the spelling can be misleading. You'll see it in the dictionary like this, sought. And this category of aw words, like sought, we have the words thought and cough, sought, etc. Not though, thought. But then we have OUGH can also say O, like in though. So that's the O sound. Here it's the ah sound. And then it also can say the schwa, in words like tough or enough. So the strategy to make these words with OUGH, OUGHT easier is simply that you need to memorize and categorize which ones go where. And I would say for the ones that have ought, thinking about they are the same as taught that has AUGHT, or taught, we pulled the rope taut, we taught them the lesson, and visualizing it with the AW, the ah spelling for this sound, grouping those words and learning thought, cough, sought, all those words that go together, learning them as a category. And that's how it's taught to native speakers here when they're children in school. They have spelling tests, spelling lessons, and they'll just learn groups of words that go together that may or may not follow the pattern. They learn the pattern in a group, and then they'll also learn, okay, these ones say oh, these ones say so that they can just memorize basically. So that's the challenge with English, is that there's not one-to-one correspondence for letters and sounds, and that you need to learn groups of words as sight words, that you memorize how they're spelled and how they sound. Thank you. Those are great suggestions, and I will take those into consideration as I'm creating my video and categories for why different words are difficult. Okay, we have a question about the words bead and bed. So the word bead is the E vowel in IPA. So we usually spell that with EE or EA. Same as in the word read or C. And then bed, that's the vowel. Yeah, so this word bead, I guess my example of a straightforward word wasn't so straightforward, because we do have words that have letters EA that say the sound, like head or read, the past tense. Read is a great example. Read and read, same spelling, using it as present tense, E, past tense, This is more common though. EA more often says the E vowel. It's less frequently saying the F vowel. That's true in head and read, and a few other words. Those tend to be the exceptions. Bread is another exception with EAD. So this F vowel we typically spell with letter E as in bed, but there are some exceptions where we spell it with EA. EA is a tricky combination. It does different things in different words. Most commonly though, the E sound like bead and read and see. Yeah, mean would be another example. I need another one spelled with EA, mean, etc. Yeah, so spelling and sounds, very tricky. That's something that you can get help with in my Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com, and also when I have my app ready to go, the Smart Accent app, you'll be able to get help with that as well with the app. Okay, we have a question about squirrel. So we talked about squirrel last week, or maybe I mentioned it that I'd be talking about it this week. This is a word that looks difficult. I'll just write hard and is hard. It's easier for native speakers because they've been saying it for longer. Squirrel, they may have trouble spelling it, and they may have trouble pronouncing it too because of the combination of sounds. So let's break it down for you. We have the first syllable stress. Squir is stressed. The QUI says k, w, and and then we have the ul, that dark L, squirrel, ul. So you can see it as more of a schwa, squirrel, ul, squirrel, ul. You could think about it as an as well, like in good and book. So this is difficult basically because of the combinations of sounds. I would build it from the So first just saying then put your w on. Were. I'm writing it here like the word were, but the sounds, there's no sound for that E. And then put your sk on. So you can either do just quir or the whole thing, squir. It's like square, but just an instead of an air. Squir. And then practice your ul. Say a word like pull or wool, and then take the P or the p or w off. Just say ul. Squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. So you might find going from the R to the ul is difficult. You can just try that part. Roll. I think it's easier to kind of break it. Squirrel, and then work on sequencing them together. Squirrel. So definitely a difficult word, and this is one where just knowing what the sounds are, breaking them down, and then potentially working on the different parts, the the ul separately, other words with and ul. The other thing that can help is you might find actually it's not as hard for you to say whirl or world, girl. Any of these other words also have that same combination. They might all be difficult for you, but working on any of them will help the others. And if there's one of these that's easier, use that to help you with the ones that are more difficult. Thank you for that request. Definitely a challenging word, and I'm sure a lot of people liked hearing that repeated, having some help with that. I do have some videos for squirrel here on the channel to help you as well, so check those out. Okay. So many questions coming in. Thank you. It's nice to see you. We have a question about Maldives. And I think this can be dive or dive, Maldives. Maldives. Again, we have the all sound, mal. So not al, not mal, but Maldives. Again, I think I'll do a quick check for that using my online dictionary. I'm going to type it in. I like the Oxford online dictionary and also the Merriam-Webster. Yeah, they say Maldives, but then some variants, dives. Yeah, so there's actually quite a few different ways it's pronounced listed in that dictionary, meaning that depending on where you are, there's going to be different variants, but the most common is Maldives. Maldives. So secondary stress on Dives and primary stress on mal. Thank you for that question. I do have a names playlist for names of places, people, brands, etc. here on the channel as well for other names you may have questions about. Okay, we have a question about work versus walk. This one is something I do have a video for and a lot of people find challenging. We talked about walk last week. What's good to know there is that the L is silent in walk. It's the same as this word walk that we cook in. And if you just think about that vowel as an ah or an ah, you can visualize it as just going right from the vowel to the K. Walk, walk. Versus in work, we have the sound. So letters OR don't say or, not war, but rather were. So many people are thinking this word is challenging or are trying to say an or here when it just has the sound. So you can think about, like, for example, the word were. We were working. So I'll rewrite it with the letters ER. So the main difference between work and walk is that walk has the ah open, no tightness, no R, whereas work, you need that tight sound. I like to walk after work. We can walk to work on nice days. Yeah, definitely a couple of somewhat challenging words, so be patient with yourself as you work on those. Great. Okay, we have a question about how to reduce your and that we reduce your and your to your. Are the reductions for we're and their? Yes, so for we're, if I say it like we're, the full form, we're doing it, I'm going to have the E sound, but my reduction tends to be, it just becomes more like were. So the ear goes to just So rather than when I'm stressing we're going, I'll just say we're going there. We're gonna do it. We're happy about it. So yeah, it's no different than the word were for we're. And for their, they are there, or even there. They're talking about their jobs. This one tends to keep the air a little bit more. Oh, also this there, same there sound. So they all have air. If I say they're going there, they're going there, that air can reduce sort of towards but I don't really say they're going there. I'd keep the air, it's just not super long and exaggerated. So I'm not saying there, but rather they're going. So I would say this one doesn't reduce as much as we're and your do. Generally the diphthongs and the triphthongs with R can drop down a level in connected speech. So ear becomes air becomes still a little bit air, but not all the way to but definitely a little bit quicker and not as drawn out on the air part. Yeah, good question. Thank you. You can get help for these types of reductions and linking in my podcast playlist. There's a lot of different practice materials helping you break down and repeat and implement those. Also in our Real Talk course on speechmodification.com, I focus a lot on linking and reductions. Great. Let's take a few more questions. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today, and I really enjoy these Saturday times together. So thank you for being here and being a part of class. So we have a question about the difference between quarrel and squirrel. So as we were saying, for squirrel, we had the whir sound, squirrel. For quarrel, this has the or sound. So just like quarter or court, for quarrel, we have the quar. So squirrel, but quarrel. So they have the same second syllable. Yeah, that's a good observation. So the quar, quarrel. Yeah, we just need to think of that as being an OR sound, or quar. Very good. Okay, and we have a question about the phrase mortgage brokerage. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So first of all, mortgage doesn't really make sense in terms of how it's spelled. And then brokerage is a difficult combination of sounds. So for mortgage, the T is silent, and even though this looks kind of like gauge or gag or gag, mortgage, it's an I sound or a schwa sound. Mortgage. I'll write it as a schwa. Then we have the j sound, which we spell with G-E-D-G-E. I'm going to write it here with a j like jump. So you can think about it as mortgage. And then for brokerage, you want to start with bro, then add your cur, and again, we have an idge or an udge, brokerage. I would say I'd probably say that mortgage, brokerage. I use more of an idge sound, so you could use that here as well. Mortgage, brokerage. Yeah, not easy. I do have a video about mortgage. I'm not sure if I have one for brokerage, but hopefully visualizing it, seeing it written down this way will help you break that down. Just take it slowly, syllable by syllable, and speed back up, and you'll be able to sequence those sounds more easily with some practice. Thank you for that suggestion, and welcome. It's nice to see you here. Okay. Yes, we have a question about the word further. Yeah, so I would say further is a word that looks difficult and is somewhat difficult. It's difficult because of the combinations of R's and TH's, which are not easy sounds to sequence or to use. So breaking it down into two parts can be helpful. First of all, the first syllable stress on the word fur. This is the same as the tree of fur, or fur in animal's skin. You can think about it like fur. It's just basically a plain sound. First syllable stress, so I'll capitalize it. I'll write it with FER because that tends to be my convention, but whatever way you visualize it that can help you get the sound in there, that's how you can think of it. And then for there, I'm just doing the TH sound together with the sound. So my fur is long and my there is quick. For the there, you can build it from just saying your and then sneak your tongue forward for the TH. There. And when you have to do from to TH back to further, just practice doing there, going TH, and So leaving the F off at first, focusing on those tight back sounds to make sure that the R is strong in both syllables. There, further. Not easy for sure. Just go slowly. Work on your R sounds and your TH sounds by themselves, and then trying to put them together in a word like further. Yeah, very nice. Okay. Yes, we have a question about August. So in the word August, the problem is usually with the letters AU, knowing how they sound. And again, this is another word like sought, where they have the ah sound. They're stressed on ah. And then letter G says the g sound in August. We have a short schwa at the second syllable. So I would just rewrite it with ah instead of AU, August. And then I would actually probably write gust. Even though it does have the sound, which we can spell with with U, I'd probably just write it gust, August, because it's very short, or even gist, August. Just thinking of that vowel as being very reduced in August. Sounds like some of these words are challenging for you, so you're noticing that it's in a word like salt, a word like August, a word like sought. So the spelling, learning all of the words that have the ah sound and how they're spelled could be very helpful in pairing those words together and getting that vowel correct for you. And you may also just find that ah vowel is difficult. I do have videos here on the channel for the ah vowel, how to work on it, what errors you might have, what words it's in. And that's also something that I cover in my Sounds of English course. So you might find that helpful as a resource for really nailing down your words and that sound. So thank you for those suggestions for being part of class today. Okay. Yes, so we'll go a little bit long today. I have a little bit of time to go ahead and make sure that I try to get to at least one of your questions. I see so many great questions coming in, and if I don't get to all of your questions, my apologies. We usually wrap up at about an hour, but we'll go a little bit long today, and I will be back again next week to take questions if I don't get to yours today. So yes, the dark L is preceded by a vowel and comes at the end of the syllable. That is a good way to look at it. It is also used in syllabic L, so things like table or model, where there's no vowel letter, but there's kind of the sound or the schwa sound. Okay, we have a question about the words very, very, and wary. So in my regional dialect of American English, these two are the same. They both have the air sound. So you can think about it like air, ver, very. So I don't vary how I say the word very. In some dialects, like New York dialect, some other dialects of English, they would say vary, more of an ah sound on this one, ar. But standard across most of the US, you can just say air for both of these. And then the word wary is not the same because it has the w sound, but otherwise it does have the same air sound. So if you have a challenge between very and wary, just know that for the w sound, you need rounded lips, thinking of the w as being a quick slide between u and a, w, wary, versus v, very. Just think of the v sound as being the same mouth position as f, like fairy, with your voice on, v, very. You can get more help for W and V in our Sounds of English course and here on the channel. And I do use examples of minimal pairs like very and wary to help you. Very good. Excellent question. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. We have a question about spelling rules. So yes, I do cover that in a few videos here on the channel. Basically, there are rules for when vowels are followed by certain letters. So I'm going to suggest that you check out that video, and after class I'll put a link to it in the description. I also cover sounds and spelling in a playlist here on the channel where you can go through and learn patterns. Basically, as you watch more videos and look at how I respell words, you can learn about spelling patterns. And there's some resources on speech modification for you as well in my online courses and in my free practice for spelling. I do have a number of videos talking about that, and I can get into it in more detail in our next class as well if you would like to come next Saturday. Okay. Yes. Let's look at battle and bottle. So sometimes when there's only one sound different between words, it can be challenging in these minimal pairs. For battle, we have the a vowel, and for bottle, we have the ah vowel. And in your native language, you might not have an a sound, so you might be saying battle the same as bottle, and what you want is to have that a sound be different. Basically, the a is open in the front, my tongue is behind my lower front teeth, and my back of my tongue is raised. I might use a word like that or had to match, had a battle, that battle, versus for a bottle, I would use a word like not a bottle or got a bottle to match that ah sound. And then if you have a challenge with the rest of the word, it's probably because there's a flap T and a syllabic L. So for that, just picture it the same as you would for a word like paddle or middle. The dull is basically just lifting the tongue up briefly and having the voice on for that flap and then going to my dark L. I do have some videos for words like battle, Seattle, little, bottle here on the channel and in our Sounds of English course, helping you get that combination if that's what's challenging for you. If it's just the vowels, I'm using some matching words. You might not have trouble between had and got. It's just because everything else in these two words are the same that it's difficult between battle and bottle. So for the ah vowel, my whole tongue is down and it's all open. Ah, nice and open. Ah, back of the tongue is lifted. Yeah, good request. That's definitely a challenging combination. So thank you for bringing that topic up. Okay. Yes. So we have a quick question about words ending in ori, like valedictory. So basically, we have for that the or sound and the e sound. Congratulatory, valedictory. So when I have a word just ending in or, like for example, major, usually this is unstressed and it'll sound like But in a longer word like congratulatory, we get some secondary stress on the or syllable, so it keeps its full or sound. So that's not true in this word victory. It's only 3 syllables, so it's the same as victor. We have the uri, victory. So I would say as a general pattern, 2 syllables, 3 syllables, you're probably going to have the sound. 4, 5, 6, and more syllables, you're going to have the ori combination. Laboratory, valedictory, celebratory. So in the dictionary, you'll see or you might see it as or for the or sound, and you'll see for the sound. But in general, longer you're going to have or, shorter you're going to have hopefully that helps you sort those out. Okay, wonderful. So a question about a link. So remind me what you would like to see the link for. Speechmodification.com is the website where you can get more information. You can also use the search tools here on our channel page. If you go to the home page, look across the top, it says home, videos, playlists, etc. There's a little search box right on the channel. And if you type in your word or your question, you might find resources here on the channel. Also, anytime you leave a comment on any of my videos, I'll respond to you and send you links for what you're looking for particular videos or sounds, or where you can find resources here on the channel and on my website. As I mentioned towards the start of class, I am working on an app that should be available pretty soon, and I'm going to be looking for people to check that out to try out the support, the feedback, and the personalized teaching that the app will give. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. I can get you on a mailing list, and I'll be putting more information about it here on the channel and on my website once it's ready to go. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. I'm sorry I didn't have time to get to everyone's questions today, but we will be back again next week. Leave me your question in a comment after class, and I'll follow up with you to make sure you get a good answer. Thanks for practicing with me, and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Look forward to seeing you again soon.